Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're doing something a little bit different. We are holding a mirror up to our own lives by extracting the timeless, absolutely profound psychological lessons from Arundhati Roy's masterpiece, The God of Small Things. Instead of just doing a basic plot summary, we're going to unpack the deeply relatable human experiences hidden inside it. We're going to explore how seemingly minor choices, complex family dynamics, and intense social conditioning shape exactly who we become over time.
So let's just jump right in and break the fourth wall for a second. Have you ever actually stopped to consider the unspoken rules that secretly dictate your behavior, your boundaries, and your relationships? It sounds like a pretty simple question, right? But the reality is that long before we even start making our own choices, society has usually already mapped out the boundaries of our affection and our identities for us. Roy hits the nail on the head here with what she calls the love laws. Now, these aren't written down in some legal textbook somewhere, but wow, do they carry the weight of absolute authority. They decide who is socially acceptable, who gets cast out, and exactly how much love we are permitted to give or receive. It's a really crucial anchor point, and we'll be returning to it again and again as we examine our own lives.
Section 1. The Invisible Love Laws.
To truly understand our own invisible scripts, we first have to recognize how power structures demand conformity from, well, all of us. While they aren't formally written down, these laws carry the power of divine commandments. They act as relentless tools of control that police our very identities. The text explores this primarily through the rigid caste and class systems in India, but the psychological lesson applies to literally any culture. These invisible codes dictate what is quote-unquote normal, and they severely punish anything that threatens the established hierarchy. And the crazy thing? They are maintained not necessarily by the government, but by the people closest to us, our communities, our institutions, and our own families.
And this brings us to the core conflict of the text, and honestly, of human existence. It's this massive, crushing weight of societal institutions constantly clashing with the delicate, intimate details that actually make life worth living. You've got the big things: history, rigid rules, the grand narratives. But the small things? Those are the brief moments of intimacy, our personal desires, and the quirky, totally unclassifiable traits that make us individuals. The text warns us that the overwhelming big things are constantly trying to crush the small things.
Here's what's truly unsettling. These laws are enforced not by courts, but by internalized humiliation, fear of ostracism, and the very families who are supposed to protect us. The psychological scars of these systemic rules linger deeply in our emotional lives. The text shows us that families will often turn on their own members just to protect their social standing. It forces us to reflect. How often do we actually police the behavior of the people we love just so we can fit in with societal expectations?
Section 2. The price of conformity. So what happens when you actually dare to cross the boundaries set by your society? Well, systems of power don't just frown upon rebellion. They actively destroy individuals to maintain their invisible hierarchies. Take Amu, an upper caste woman, and Velutha, a lower caste man. They shared this incredibly pure, genuine love. But because it breaks the love laws, they are completely and utterly devastated by the system. The tragedy isn't the love itself. The tragedy is the brutal societal backlash that just cannot tolerate their boundary-crossing relationship. Things can change in a day. It's a haunting refrain, isn't it? It reminds us of the extreme fragility of our lives when we live under systems that penalize honesty and encourage blind obedience. It's a stark reminder that when we build our lives on the unstable ground of unfair societal rules, our security is just a complete illusion. It literally takes one day, one forbidden choice, for the entire facade to crumble.
Section 3. How trauma haunts adulthood.
We see the true cost of these rules not just in the people who break them, but in the children who witness the fallout. Unprocessed childhood shocks, like losing a loved one to an unfair system, build a psychological map of trauma that absolutely haunts us into adulthood. The twins in the story, Estha and Rahel, experience the incomprehensible terror of systemic violence. Because they are children, they just can't fully process the complex adult forces at play. This unresolved trauma completely arrests their emotional development, trapping them in a lifelong stasis of silence and emptiness.
Take Easta's eventual refusal to speak. It isn't just a dramatic plot point. It's an unconscious investigation and a desperate psychological retreat to avoid incriminating the people he loves. Trauma isn't just about what happened. It's often about the terrifying inability to know what happened. Easta stops speaking because the system literally penalizes honesty. His silence is a physical manifestation of a society that suppresses dissent and buries uncomfortable truths.
Think about your own life for a moment. Have you ever silenced your own truth just to keep the peace? Much like the twins who carry the unspoken grief of a system they don't fully understand, when we are forced to bury our authentic selves or our painful past to comply with social norms, we fracture our own identities. We basically become ghosts haunting our own lives.
When you hurt people, they begin to love you a little less. That's what careless words do. Man, that hits hard, doesn't it? The text shows us the fatal materiality of our language. Words, once they are spoken, simply cannot be taken back. They shape our identities and cause deep emotional fractures. This devastatingly true realization speaks directly to family dynamics and the profound responsibility we have in how we communicate. Careless words create permanent boundaries. And in this story, they literally set the stage for unimaginable tragedy.
Section 4. The courage of small things.
Yet amidst all the trauma and the heavy rules, we are offered a profound blueprint for resistance. How do we fight back against overwhelming systemic pressure? Well, when the big things are just too overwhelming to fight head-on, focusing on the minor details, a shared glance, a fleeting touch, becomes a radical act of claiming your own humanity. Amu and Velutha knew their love was doomed by the rigid laws of their society, but instead of surrendering entirely, they chose to fully inhabit the small, present moments. Finding joy and intimacy in a highly restrictive world is in itself a powerful form of rebellion.
By reframing forbidden love, not as some fluffy romantic ideal, but as a courageous political act of defiance, we challenge the very foundations of systematic oppression. By choosing to love authentically, even when it is a little less lawful, a little more wild, a little more fallible, we assert our own agency. The lesson here is incredibly potent. Our personal, everyday choices, who we empathize with, who we choose to love, how we express our true selves, are massive ways to push back against a world that demands conformity.
Section 5. Breaking the destructive cycle.
So, how do we actually take these timeless philosophical insights and apply them to our modern lives? By recognizing our own performative roles. Much like the traditional Kathakali dancers referenced throughout the text who blindly play out ancient, rigid stories, we can actually choose to step off the stage. We must actively challenge our internal biases. You've got to question the love laws operating in your own workplace, your family, and your community. Acknowledge your past traumas so they don't dictate your future. And most importantly, vigorously protect your small things, your empathy, your emotional truth, and your authentic relationships. I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought to chew on. Look really closely at your own life and ask yourself, whose rules are you truly living by? Are you protecting the rigid, societal big things, or are you brave enough to nurture the fragile, beautiful small things? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Take these lessons, actively question the invisible laws around you, and as always, keep learning.